welcome to this episode of Tips and Techniques video series from Spanner Product Development. I'm Mark Biasotti, and over the next 30 minutes, I'll introduce you to some of my favorite tips and techniques to help you be more productive and create better quality data when using SolidWorks. So whether you're a seasoned SolidWorks user or a beginner, we think you'll learn something new in this series. For your convenience, we've listed the topics in the YouTube description that we'll be covering in today's episode, along with a timestamp for each topic in the video. Feel free to skip ahead to any tip you want to learn more about. This series is being brought to you by Spanner Product Development, a product development company dedicated to creating positive impact in the world, merging innovation, sustainability, and responsibility to bring meaningful experiences to life for over 100 clients. If you want to learn more about what Spanner has to offer, stop by our website at spannerpd.com or email us at hello@spannerpd.com. Now let's get started with this episode of SolidWorks Tips and Techniques series.
I mentioned in an earlier episode this feature called breadcrumbs, and I thought I would just expand on that a little bit here. It has an interesting background. It came from some work done earlier this decade on the 3D experience products, and made its way in its first debut into mechanical conceptual, and then into some other products, and then eventually back into SolidWorks. And you can think of it as an alternative to the feature manager. So traditionally, we come to the feature manager to find all of our features, and sometimes it can be very tedious, because if you have a large assembly or a large part, you have to start drilling down to its subassembly, its part, and then its feature, and then its sketch. Breadcrumbs is an alternative to that. So if we come over here and click on this component, we can see this set of icons up here in the upper left. And what they're depicting for us is essentially the alternative to the feature manager, a hierarchy of sets of features that you might want to access. So we start with the first one here on the left, which is the main assembly. And then coming down next to that would be the component, the body, and then actually the feature. And then under that is the actual sketch. Now, if I want to edit the sketch, I can right-click on this feature and edit it similar to what we usually do when we go to the feature manager. And so now we're at the sketch level. We can make our changes and then rebuild. And you notice that we're still down at the edit part mode. And it's as easy as that. So it's a great alternative if you really want to become more productive, speed up your modeling sessions. You should consider breadcrumbs, because it really takes a lot of the tedium away from traversing the feature manager. This next tip has to do with a productivity enhancer that is in SolidWorks that you might not be aware of. And it has to do with dimensioning, and more specifically, dimensioning angles. So we're very familiar with Smart Dimension. It's probably what most of us use, and it gives us the ability to apply all different types of dimensions with a single dimension command. So I know that if I click on this sketch entity and this horizontal one, I can apply a angle dimension. So, but there is the occasion when I don't have a horizontal or a vertical reference to for that angle. And besides, I don't want to sometimes dimension to other entities, because those entities can change. I want something that's a little bit more robust and bulletproof. So what I've been doing for a long time now when it comes to dimensioning angles is using the feature that you have built into SolidWorks when you dimension, of dimensioning using the endpoints as your dimension reference. So let me just illustrate. So I'm going to again put a angle dimension in here, but instead of picking another element, I'm going to go to its end vertice, and there you get a pop-up for the known XY vectors that you can dimension to. So if I move my cursor to one of those, now I have the ability to place a dimension just using the single sketch entity. And I find this is probably a more robust modeling solution because it's not relying on any other entity. It's just dimensioning itself to the known XY. So it's not only a time saver, but I just think it makes for more robust modeling. So I just wanted to introduce that to you, and you can try it out and see if it works for you. This next tip is a great productivity enhancer, and it is the repeat last command that is built into SolidWorks, and by default it's built into the Enter key, and allows you to, when creating features and then having to create that feature repetitively, to actually hit the Enter key right after you complete the command and enter back into it. So there are some features in SolidWorks where you have to create multiple repetitive features to build up your model. One of the ones that I'm thinking about is the full round feature. And we know that we can only build one full round at a time, and then if we have something like this knob where we have to do full rounds in all of these concaved areas, that's a lot of work. So how do we get through that as fast as possible? So a few other things. We're going to use the repeat command key to do that, and then we're also going to use some smart selection that's built into SolidWorks. So with a lot of the commands, with a lot of the features in SolidWorks, when you invoke the command, the first selection box is selected for you, so you don't have to move over to it. With the full round, it's rather convenient that you can right-click on your mouse button to move to the next selection. So let me show you. So I'm going to pick this first face, and then immediately I'm going to pick my right mouse button, pick the second face, right mouse button, and then the third face, get my preview, and then the right mouse button again. You can see the confirmation check mark. I've completed my command. And I immediately hit the Enter key on my keyboard, and I'm back in the command. Do that again. So click left on your face, right click, left click, right click, left click, and then enter. So let me speed this video up. I'm going to finish these and I'll come back and just say a few more things. Okay, so I finished up all my full rounds, and you're probably asking, Mark, why didn't you just build in the full round into your sketch and then extrude a profile? Yes, of course, you could have done that, but there are a lot of cases in models that are more complex than this that you don't get that option, that you have to actually apply full rounds, especially on more complex geometry. That's just not an extrude. So I showed you some of the selection in full round. There's some quite nice selection in regular fillets also. Like for instance, now I have to finish up these fillets on the outside edge. And if you have the show selection toolbar selected here and you click, you get a pop-up here that allows you to pick a number of different solutions for the entire body. So the first one is what I want. I want all those outer vertical edges. And by just clicking once, I've selected all of those at one time, which is a great enhancement to productivity. I'm going to make those 1.5. Well, let's make them a little bit bigger. And then complete. And now I can just pick the top face and put a fillet on its outer perimeter of 1. And there I've detailed my knob rather quickly with some really smart selection. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. Next time, before just picking lots of edges, think about how SolidWorks can help you do it more smartly. This next feature is a huge productivity enhancement, especially if you're working with large models like the one you see here, and especially when you have lots of reference features like this model where there's lots and lots of planes. And basically when the model gets so big, it's hard to actually traverse through it and find a particular feature that you want. Now, for example, in this model, I know that I have a plane that I once created that has something to do with midway through cockpit, but unless I stare at this screen for a long time, I'm not going to find it. So fortunately, there is a feature that we have in SolidWorks called the feature tree filter. But you first might want to ask, well, Mark, why not just use view types and turn on and off the planes themselves? Well, for this particular example, if I turn off all my planes, then I can't really visually find the one I'm looking for. So this has more to do with finding a particular set of planes amongst all visible planes. So we're going to leave that on, and we're going to go over to now the feature manager and type planes. So this is going to be a two-step process. The first thing I do is type planes, and it filters the tree to show just all my planes. Now that I have those, I can click select, shift select, and go down and select all planes, and then right click hide. So now I have all my planes hidden, and it's going to take a bit of time here. It's a huge model. And now while I have that search for planes on, I can more easily traverse down my feature manager and look for that particular plane that I have right here, which is plane 99 midway through cockpit. And there it is right there. So that's a faster way than trying to just manually go through my scene and find it. Another nice feature of the filters is if I know that that's plane 99, it will bring it singularly into view, and while I have it, I can rename it. And in this case, I'm going to make them caps so that I can find it better. And there you have it. Another nice feature of this is, you know, that you can do a Shift C to collapse, and you know that I like to work in folders, but when you use the filter, like for planes, it will automatically expand all the folders so that you can see all those folders expanded and get to those features. Another popular one is, for instance, I want to know where my shells are. So I type in shell, and I can see that my main shell is right here. And then I have additional shells for some other components like headlights and taillights. It's a pretty simple filter. I mean, it doesn't use Booleans, or it can't use Booleans, which would be a nice enhancement for SolidWorks. If you notice when you type planes in here, it also includes a surface plane. And if you try to do a boolean like a star, it really won't work. But as is, it's pretty useful. So that is the Feature Manager search filter. In this next tip, I'm going to show you how you can use 3D sketches as references, especially when you're at an assembly level and you're working with master models where you're using a bottom-up type of approach. What I mean by that is that this upper and lower housing were created from a stock feature, a master model. And in those that are assembled into this assembly with these components, there aren't any features yet for the components that I placed at the assembly level. So we have this three-way wet valve, we have a pump, we have some other components, a 3D a PCB. And what we need to do now is to create additional features in the master to mount these into the lower housing. So let's go ahead and hide the upper housing part, and let's go ahead at the assembly level, create a 3D sketch. And the way I'm going to use this is to basically pick on faces and use convert entities to create that 3D sketch. But not only for this component, I'll just do them all in the same 3D sketch. I'll pick these faces for the pump, or the valve that is. And let's also pick the outer profile of this PCB. And so now that we have this 3D sketch at the top level, we can go and we can use that. So let's first say that we want to copy that. And then let's go to our master, which is, we can get to it from this upper housing editing context. So now we're at the master model level. And remember, I just copied that 3D sketch. Should be able to go here and say paste. And now we have that 3D sketch in our master, and it's a reference. One thing you probably want to do is, if we start modifying things here, let's go ahead and drag that up to the top, right below origin. And because there's no association anywhere, even on a plane, it's very flexible. You can do that. And so now what I want to do, I know that this PCB is rather close to this wall. So let's use our breadcrumbs to find out where this feature is. Let me show my top view. And I know that I probably want to move this wall away a bit from that. I could even dimension it if I wanted to, from here to here, and say that I want it to be 7 millimeters. And now that I regenerate my master, I can see I have a comfortable distance or margin there. Let's go ahead and create a few more features and then go back to the assembly. So I know that the mount for this three-way valve sits right at this point. Let's just measure that from the right plane. And we have about 127. So we're going to turn on our planes. And we're going to drag this guy 127. And it looks like I already created a plane there. We'll just use this one. And here we're going to create our mounting features. So I am going to go into this view. Let's try that again. So we're going to edit a sketch on that plane. Create our bosses, our mounting bosses, that is. Let's then select and say equal. Make them something like 7. And then we'll extrude out from that. Something like 10 millimeters would be fine. Let's just make one more feature to connect these to our bottom housing. So we're going to make another extrusion. This time we'll use a slot. Grab that center point. Make these co-radial. And then extrude that out, say another 10 millimeters. Now we have a boss feature. Of course, we'll put in the hole wizards for our threads and whatnot. Looks like we want to probably move this guy also. Let's find out what that is. And we'll use again our breadcrumbs, or try to do that. Sometimes breadcrumbs won't work very well because you have other features like shells and move faces that get in the way. So I'm going to roll forward. You can see we still have our features there, so that'll help us. And we're going to edit this sketch. Oops, wrong one. Let's go to the bottom and let's find our feature. Yeah. So now in this view, I'm just going to take all of this, and I know that I need to move this somewhere there. Okay, and then roll forward. And so all we have to do is maybe move our slot down a bit, and I'll do that by using an intersection curve here to find out where we need to land. And then we'll go ahead and just unconstrain this. Move it down. And I'm lazy, so what I'm going to do actually is in the extrude feature, I'm going to use contour select to pick these parts that come down to that line. And so now I have my boss. One thing you have to do now, that if you forget to do it, is to move your saved bodies below those features so they'll be included. And now we go back to our assembly. And you can see that now we have a comfortable distance for our PCB, but we also have the mounting points for our pump right here. So that is how you can use assembly with a 3D sketch to get your references. In this next example, did you know that you can extrude or cut a 3D sketch? Some cases that becomes useful to do when you don't have a planar reference. Like for instance, the start of this controller handle, I have an interface area. I need to cut a pocket in here normal to this existing face. And so I'm going to use 3D Sketch to cut into that. But we first have to make a reference, because 3D Sketch, you have to remember, requires a direction. Because it's not created on a reference plane, it needs a direction, like an axis or a model edge or a sketch that you create. I'm going to create a sketch to do that. So first what I'll do is use this plane to do a intersection curve between this face here, and now that I have that, I can continue to create some more 3D geometry. So I'm going to just pick a point here. Let's see if I can make a perpendicular reference. I can. And then I don't think I can create a midpoint on this. So I'll just create another construction line from here to here. Create a point on that mid, and then align the two. Okay. So now I have my reference for my 3D extrude. I can now go to the feature, well, first I have to create my 3D sketch profile. So I'm going to right-click here, select tangency, and convert edges. So now I've converted edges, and now that I have that, I can go to my cut extrude, and with my profile, all it needs now is a direction. So I'm going to pick that as my direction, reverse it, go down 0.075, and complete my cut. Now, one thing you're seeing here is that because I'm cutting in only one direction, it's a tiny piece of material on top because of the intolerance of the 3D sketch. Let's instead go both first and second direction just to remove some additional material up top. So now that we have it, we can see that we've used our 3D sketch to be able to cut into that area, do it on a 3D direction, and you can see the bottom floor, it's capped it with whatever existed up top. So that's using your 3D sketch as an extrude. In this next example, I'm going to show you how to orient models to what we would want the front, top, and right views to be. And there are situations where you have models that are modeled at an oblique angle. If you look at our current default front view, it looks something like this. And that's because this was modeled in the master model, and this trigger control actually sits at this angle from the front view. Problem is we want to do some additional modeling on this derived part, and we want to do it with it being oriented somewhat normal to the front top side. Now I can make views that reflect that. Here's my front view, my side view, my top view. And we know that, well, you should know that you can pick one face and then hold down your control key, pick another face that represents your up face, and then click on normal too, and you will get that view orientation. That's how I created these additional views. That's all good for viewing it, but let's go ahead and do some modeling. And the modeling we want to do here is we want to hollow out this trigger. So I'm going to pick this face and start to create some sketch geometry on it. And as I pull across here, I notice that I don't get any constraint for my horizontal constraint. That's because what I'm drawing at is really not horizontal. If I put a horizontal constraint in here, I get something that looks like this. So if I borrow some geometry here by converting it and then putting a dimension between these two, I see that my normally horizontal axis is 60.23 off from normal. Let's unconstrain this, and then I'm going to do a tip to change my modify sketch to reflect that 60.23. So modify sketch, I have in my shortcut here. And you can see that with modify sketch, you do get the ability to rotate. So what would happen if we rotate 60.23? Well, now we've rotated our entire sketch to account for the fact that horizontal is not actually 60.23, but I've rotated my sketch. So now I can actually put some constraints in here, like horizontal, that actually work. And let's just go ahead and complete the rest of our sketch. And we know that we want this to be something like 35 degrees. And then we want to take this edge, offset it by maybe 2 in the reverse direction. And then just do one more offset right here. And make that by like 1.5. Okay. Now we can go and we can cut through. We can use contour select to pick this area through all in both directions. And now we have our feature. And so that's how you can use Modify Sketch to overcome models that are not normally placed in the default front top side view. So sometimes you might have the occasion to do a quick screen grab of your SolidWorks model or assembly, and you've probably noticed that when you do a screen grab, so what I'm talking about is in an assembly or part, you can directly print out the screen in a image type format, so PNG or JPEG or TIFF. Here if we just pick a TIFF and we throw it into this temp directory as IF1, we go over to our PowerPoint and we insert that image. We notice that, you know, it just looks the same way it did in SolidWorks. The resolution isn't the best, and in PowerPoint, a lot of times you might want to take some details like crop an area and blow it up. And when you zoom in on these models, it's rather disappointing. It isn't the resolution that you really want for a presentation. That's really true when you're doing line art. Like for instance, if you're doing a patent, and let's say we'll put this into hidden line view, and then we'll do that again. We'll save it as a JPEG in that same directory. Overwrite it, and then go back to PowerPoint. This really isn't very satisfying, especially when you blow up, because detail really gets lost. So there's a way around that. It's pretty easy actually. So let's go back to SolidWorks, and now instead of well, we just keep the same view, save as. We're going to again do a PNG, and this time instead of doing screen capture, we're going to do print capture. And now we can actually increase the resolution that SolidWorks saves the viewport to. So we're going to up it to something like 400, and we'll go back to that same directory, overwrite the same image. It was a JPEG, that's why. And save it. Takes a little bit longer sometimes because it has to do more image processing. Go back to PowerPoint, insert picture, and pretty dramatic difference, especially when you're zoomed in. You can see what the resolution is doing for you when you save it at 400 dpi. So another nice tip about when saving screen grabs or SolidWorks is if we do that again, let's say we want a shaded view of this, and when we save it now and go into options, let's save it as a PNG again. Now PNG is important because PNG carries with it what's called an alpha channel or a transparency background channel. And if it does have that in PNG, we can actually click on this option to remove the background. And let's overwrite, well, let's go here and just say it's a PNG now in that same directory. Saving, go to PowerPoint, insert picture. And so now you can see we have, oops, sorry, deleted the wrong image. Let's delete this one. You can see that we have transparent background now. And that becomes important because, like, maybe we want to put a drop shadow in here for our presentation. So if we just start to play with our controls here, we can put a drop shadow in. There you have it. So that gives you a really nice way of doing presentations from SolidWorks very quickly by taking screen grabs and putting them into your presentations.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. We hope what you've learned has been informative and can help you to excel using SolidWorks day to day. You'll see below some links to example models used in today's video. Feel free to download them and explore these techniques at your own leisure. Also, we'd love to hear from you. Please email me at the address you see here. If you need help on your design project or just want to know more about us, stop by our website at spannerpd.com or email us at hello@spannerpd.com. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.